tank of gas? Does he boots on the wood, let the whiskey pass? I ain't preaching from a pulpit, I'm talking.
Welcome everybody once again to the FAFO Podcast. And I got an author here today. And he's not just an author. This man has done so many things in his life already. It's kind of incredible. So when we booked this guest, I thought, this is going to be fun for me. I know it's going to be fun for me, so I know it's going to be fun for you guys. Because today's guest has one of the most fascinating storytelling careers you'll ever hear about, for sure. Dick Wybrow has worked in major market radio, produced television for CNN and CNN International, and now writes best-selling humorous science fiction and fantasy novels from New Zealand. Along the way, he's become passionate about helping everyday people finally write the book they've always dreamed about. So, without further ado, Dick, welcome to the FAFO Podcast, my friend.
Brother, nice to see you. And yeah, I'm on the other side of the world, and I'm in the future. I'm in Christchurch, New Zealand right now, as you can tell by my thick Kiwi accent. But yes, so yeah, I'm in the future here. So wherever you are, I'm about, I think it's like 18 hours ahead or something like that. So, but we are sworn to silence, so I can't tell you what's going to happen. But
so no spoilers, folks. No spoilers.
No spoilers. No lottery numbers, none of that stuff. But yeah, no, we've been living here for about 12 years or so. I found out that my father was Kiwi. Well, still is. He did not stop becoming Kiwi, but so he was Kiwi, and so I found out I was what's called citizen by descent, and so I was like, let me file the paperwork for that, and then so about 12 years ago, my wife and I were, let's go, and so we moved here. So yeah, we're going great. You love it.
Well, how does she like it? She's like all for it?
She's a Texas girl, man. So she scares him. she frightens her some Kiwis is what she does. But she's getting her rhythm out here, brother, and so it's going good. She loves it out here, but it's a different feel. It's an entirely different sort of vibe. So I mean, not even better or worse, nothing like that. But like you go, like she flew home to Atlanta, like where her dad lives and her brother lives and all that. And she went to like the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson airport, and it was just it's just noise. And we're used to here where people they're very quiet. They're just quiet. They just sort of keep to themselves. We were at Britomart, which is in Auckland. That's where like all the trains and all the buses and everything come in, and you're surrounded by hundreds of people, everywhere, and you'd never know it because people are just kind of quiet. They speak to each other, but at low voices, this sort of thing. So yeah, it's a different vibe out here entirely. Which for a couple of folks that spent a lot of time in North America, man, we stand out. We're loud. Yeah, so we've had to find the mute button.
Right, so when FAFO came here, and then all the Europeans were coming over and governing America, like this place is insane.
Yeah.
Probably not very far off, but it did tickle me though, that other point of view coming in. So that is fascinating to know about New Zealand. I did not know that it was so light.
It's just real quiet. People are really, I mean, it's I think part of it is they don't want people to come here. The government wants people to come here because, bring those tourist dollars in. But for the most part, it's like, ixnay on is it vay, because it's a beautiful country. But people come here and then they just leave trash all over the place. So they just kind of keep it to them. Everywhere you go, when you drive somewhere, it's like, there's a postcard. It's absolutely beautiful. Everywhere you go. It's gorgeous.
That's pretty awesome though, really. I mean, It must be nice. The scenery itself must be nice. But let's talk about you and how you are so creative. First of all, I mean, This is wild. Have you always wanted to be a writer, or were you always just creative?
I was always somebody avoiding a proper job. Really is what it came down to. I did have crap jobs for sure along the way, but my first job was a stand-up comedian. Did that for a couple of years, then got into the radio thing. Basically, my car broke down, couldn't drive to gigs anymore, so I got to find something in the city. So I got a job in radio, did that for 12 years, and then moved into television doing some producing. But then in New Zealand and other parts of the world, then they kind of just deleted television. Like nobody watches TV anymore. And so I was at a news program and they just like, okay, we're done. There's no more. We're out of news. This is New Zealand, right? There's not a lot's going on. So we just apparently ran out of news. So they closed down my show, and they closed down all the news entities on TV3 where I was. They just got rid of all of it.
Oh, wow.
And so at that, yeah. So there was me. And so I did a news and comedy thing, right? And so I did like this variety sort of show at 7:00. It was a live show. We had like 3 hosts, and we have another rotating guest that would come in. And we do news stories, but there was a lot of humor. We had comedians that work for us, comedy writers that work for us. I actually was part of one of the very few CNN comedy shows. There's a guy named Pete Dominic, and it was called What the Week. And it was a news and comedy show on CNN.
Oh, wow.
And so I was, it was not very well known because an Arab Spring came in and nobody wanted to make jokes anymore. So we all got fired. There are a lot of getting fired in my past, but it's good though. But so anyway, so then I lost the job at TV3 here. And then I was like, I got to find another career because there's no more TV here. There's no more TV anywhere else. TV's just going away.
Yeah.
It's turning into streaming now, right? And so I had always done the writing, and everything I did along the way was writing. You mentioned writing for CNN and writing for CNN International. There's a lot of writing involved with that. And a lot of people think that, when you write news, you just write the facts down. But it's like, you're not writing ingredients. You've got to be able to take a big story and condense it down into, like in the case for like CNN International, to take that down to like 25 words. That's not easy to do, man. Oh, here's some skirmish with, in the Middle East, condense that down into 20 seconds, 25 seconds. And then you go over to headline news, which was another one of the properties that Turner had. You got to take that 25-second story down, and now you got to do it in 11. So I tell you, all that really taught you how to, the economy of words, as you call it, taught you how to write. But I've always been writing all along the way since I was like 17. I wrote my first book when I was a teenager, and I'll tell you what, it was awful. Actually, it was really, really bad. And so I wrote another couple after that, and eventually, back in 2018 was really the first time that was Hell Inc. If you're watching the video, Hell Inc. was my sort of the first book that really that series kind of took off. And I built up from there. Then about 3 years ago, when I got canned out of television here, I had to really embrace the writing thing because I had then run out of any marketable skills other than this. And so I was all in, man. And thankfully, God willing, it all worked out. And I have some amazing readers, just delightful readers. It's been an amazing trip all along the ways. And I've just started on new ventures, and I'm moving into sci-fi humor, and I'm producing audiobooks. And so it's been great. It's been real busy, but it's great.
It is fascinating because when I was researching your profile, I got into the books you're writing because you've written 21, 22 books in the last 8 years. I mean, it's
something like that.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But then I got to reading a lot of the samples and trying to figure out which ones I had to buy first because I got interested in what you're writing there. I thought, holy crap, this is somebody who really has thrown themselves into it. When you did jump into that, did you find it difficult, or did you find the process actually for you not easy, but where it flowed more naturally?
Do you know the hard part with any of the writing, because luckily for me, I've gotten past that place, because I know there's a lot of people that are listening or watching that have always wanted to write a book and like, oh, I'm trying to make this sort of thing happen. Thankfully, I've written, after 15, 16, 17 books, now I've convinced myself I can probably write a book. So actually creating the book and all that is not the biggest challenge, because when you first start out, it's just getting past that mental hurdle of actually being able to do that. It just really comes down to how much work it is, and it should be a lot of work. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard to do, and anything that's good, hopefully good, it should be something that's hard to do. And so hopefully each book I get a little bit better than the last. But I can write a book in about a month, but my editing takes about 6 weeks. So I don't know what that says. But I spent a lot of time at it. But it's hard to do. And for as much as I really do love it, sitting in my little room here and having all my imaginary friends play on the paper, it's work. There's a lot of work involved with it. And like I mentioned before, you're doing the editing, but I'm also now producing an audiobook for the new series, the new book, the Facilite Con, which comes out in a little bit. But I have to remind myself when I get really bogged down and exhausted, like I'm working for me now. So all those years I worked for like other entities, even when it was radio and when it was television, busted my butt for that. Now I'm busting my butt and I'm exhausted, but I'm doing it for my own family. All that effort goes to my stuff. So that's a bit of a charge.
Which is truly, I think that's the coolest thing, because like you said, writing is difficult. It took me 14 years to write my first one. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done some hard things, I thought. But it is difficult. But after you get past that first one, it does become easier. But I was so fascinated because I was looking at your reviews. You've got tons of reviews, which for an independent author or people in this trying to get in this space, it is really important to get those. How were you able to really transition into that to where you were able to compile reviews and get readers into your books? Was there a secret thing that you had with advertising?
No. One advantage that I have, and that God bless me with a bizarre sense of humor, and I've lived off of that for years. So kind of my point of difference with a lot of things is the fact that it's somewhat funny. And anything I do when it comes to the fantasies, like with the Hellink series or the Kane series, or now with the Facilite Con, it's, that's the kind of fantasy or fantastic or urban fantasy, and this latest one is science fiction, but it's all sort of like funny, and people really do respond to that. And I'll be honest, with the Kane series in particular, the readers have been so brilliant for me. They've been so great. Some have really, really taken it to heart, and they've fallen in love with this character Kane. And that's really just resonated. They tell their friends about it. They tell family about it. And so, I mean, I wish I could give you a better answer other than just I found my own little niche, and I also service my my readers quite a bit. So anytime a reader might reach out to me, I respond to emails. If a reader's going to say something on a social media post, whatever, I respond to them. I gladly do that. And I've been writing a newsletter to my readers every day for the last probably 5-6 years. And so, every week for the last 5 or 6 years. So every single week, they're going to get something from me. And it's not, and a lot of times I don't have anything I'm pitching. It's just, here's sort of some thoughts from New Zealand, or here's some stuff that's been rolling around in my head. In fact, just before talking to you today, I was writing the first part of it, of my newsletter. I'm going to be sending out later on this afternoon. So I think treating your readers with respect and showing them as much love as they're showing you, I think there's some element to that makes a big difference, and they're responding in kind. So I've been very, very blessed.
And I agree with that completely, because I hate to even say it, but I've been a professional wrestler for about 30 years. And from all the stupidity I've done over 30 years, the one thing that's taught me the most is the engagement with your audience. And I've transitioned that into my writing as well. So I think that's brilliant. Is that one of the things you would tell somebody is super important, though, to any upcoming author, is that audience engagement with your fans?
Not even just author. I remember I got a chance, it sounds like I'm name dropping now, but I got a chance to, when I was in rock radio, to speak with people like, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley of Kiss. And we actually had Steven Tyler join us in studio from Aerosmith. And he himself was just saying, like, we weren't the best band that came out of Boston. We just kind of got lucky. He said, what was the big difference? He goes, well, the fans. And so that's why those older rockers, they really know that they're here. They're still around because of the fans. Yeah. It's the stuff you put out. You put out great songs. A lot of people put out great songs. But really what gets you through is that relationship with people that happen to dig what you're doing. Because there's plenty of people that'll read my stuff and go, that's not for me. I don't like it. In fact, I would argue that there's far more people that don't like my stuff than do like my stuff. And that's not a bad thing. Because if I'm writing from my perspective or from my heart, if I'm appealing to everybody, well, that's not working. That means nobody loves it. That just means it's sort of like, it's kind of mid-tier for everybody. But if you got people that really love your stuff, you got people that aren't going to like it. So you find your tribe, for lack of a better expression. And once you find them, you embrace them, and you show a lot of love back.
Yeah, and I love that. So about the audiobook producing. Audiobooks are a monster altogether. And getting, I know I failed at that big time because I'm dumb, first of all, when it came to how I approached it. When you got into that, was it a completely different animal than what you thought it was going to be?
Well, I the first time, like with the Hellink series that I did, when I first did the first Hellink book, I spent about a week, and I went into a closet that I padded out, and I got a microphone, recorded it, and I recorded the entire thing. Then I listened back, and I realized I am not a narrator. I can talk like this.
Yeah.
I made a successful career out of being a radio personality. It was major market radio, got awards and all that stuff. But I am not an actor. And these people that do this are next level. So they're just really, really good. And so the woman a woman named Amy Hutchins, she's an actor out of New York, and she's the one who voiced the Facilite Con, and she's just brilliant. And so it's a lot of admin on my end. So I give her, I'll get too in the weeds with this, but I give her, here's a sample. I want you to read that. I went to my readers and said, here's a couple of people. Who do you like? They picked her. So I went back to her. I put a contract together. I got that contract to her. She agreed to it. We made some changes back and forth. And then from there, she delivered, and she's got her own engineer, and they gave me the files. Then I've got to get those up onto the websites. And since I'm over here, and again, this is a bit in the weeds, so I apologize to your listeners, but we don't have ACX here, and that's the Audible sort of format. Like we got in the US and the UK and Canada, I think it has in that, but we don't have it down here in the Antipodes. down under, we don't got access to that. So I've got to go through these third-party websites, and they all have all specific requirements for submitting all this stuff. And so it takes a little bit to get all of the metadata right, and you've got to get the frequencies right, and you've got to get all that stuff. And so there's a lot of fussing around with it to be able to get it, because anytime you try to make a change, it can be weeks until that change gets fixed. Like if I want to change something, like in one of my ebooks, or even a paperback, I can make a change and it'll be uploaded and changed in the next hour or two when it comes to the ebook. When it comes to something like if there's something wrong in the audiobook, that can be weeks before that thing, perpetuates down to the rest of them. But it's been great. It's been an amazing learning experience to be able to do this again. Thankfully, in many ways, the Kane series got picked up by the guys at Podium. And so they've been producing those books. But I thought after all this time, I've been with them, they've done like the Kane series, the Wolfware series, but the Kane books, there's 8 books in that series. And so they've basically purchased the rights to do audio for all those books. So they've done the first 7, and the 8th one is about to come out. And on this one, I kind of wanted to take the reins on it a bit because, I've done audio producing in the past, and I thought I'd just give, to take a shot at it myself. And I realized why it's much better sometimes for somebody else to do all that work. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. I tried doing it myself, and I thought, nope, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen because you're right.
It's been rewarding.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your first series. How did you come up with it?
Well, it's funny. I can actually tell you the series you probably don't even know about. There was a book back in 2012 that I put out because what had happened was I had written a book back like in 2002, 2003 or so. And I happened to get an agent. I don't know how that haven't got an agent. And and then I wrote a follow-up book to that while they were sort of shipping it around. But anyways, that relationship kind of fell apart in a real ugly way. And it should have been something that worked. And I had written kind of this thriller series. And I'd said to my wife, and I just said, it's just really, really challenging, really annoying because it took so much work and research. And I did all these interviews and all this stuff. And at the time, 50 Shades of Grey was doing really well. And I was really embittered by that because it was just like this trashy thing. And so I was annoyed by this idea. This person had so much success for this, and my wife said, well, why don't you just write something like that? So I'm going to write something like that. She said, just write something you would like. And so I came up with this idea of 50 Shades of Grey matter by taking 50 Shades of Grey and putting zombies in it. And so that was my idea behind it. So the 50 Shades of Grey matter. And so I wrote this thing. I never read 50 Shades of Grey. So it wasn't like one of those where Pride and Prejudice and zombies, where it's just Pride and Prejudice was, I didn't read 50 Shades of Grey. So I basically just wrote this stupid story about, zombies that had sort of some semi-sexual elements, but not really. I can tell you, I changed the title to be called The Swordsman, and I'll leave it at that. I'll put it that way. But so anyways, so I wrote this book, right? And so I put the first one out, I did it in a serial, and I had no idea what I was doing. I just put it up on Amazon. And I put the first one out in September, the second in October, actually the first one in, let's say, August, the second in September. And by that time, you put it out and, people are kind of picking it up, but no one's really saying anything. I don't know. Is this even worth it? Nobody even cares. But then I've saved this to this day. Somebody had this reviewer said, like, this might be borderline genius or insane. And it was just one of these things where I just found somebody out there who totally dug my bizarre kind of sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so by December, that book was #1 on Amazon in comedy. And so I was like, wait a minute. So I knew I had an avenue. I knew, especially when it came to humor, I had a bit of a slice. And so it took me a couple of years with moving around and messing around. And then in 2018, I started the Hell Inc. series. And that was just kind of me goofing a bit, to be honest. And it was, in a lot of ways, it was about how much I loved my wife. Because the story is about there's this guy named Raz Frewer, and his wife is dying, and I never quite say why, but he's dying. Rather, she's dying. None of the doctors can come up with a cure or fix her, and so they say, "Listen, Raz, you need to go ahead and make some arrangements and start saying goodbye to your wife." And he just doesn't take that, and he's like, "No, I don't want to do that." So what he does is he goes down to the crossroads, and he meets up with the devil. And he makes a bet with the devil to be able to, he wants to save his wife. And so the devil says, fine, if you want to save her, there's this lamp that can cure her. But the pieces are scattered all over the world. Go find those pieces, bring it back. This will cure her. Give me the lamp and we're good. And basically the story's about the devil wants this lamp for himself. And then, so that's what it was. That was sort of the premise behind it. Basically me loving my wife. And people gravitated towards that. And that was part, in a lot of ways, teaching me how to write a novel in that way, because there are no real strong rules for writing a humor novel. It's a little bit, in a way, like doing stand-up comedy. There's no real schools. There's no business college that will teach you how to do stand-up comedy. You kind of have to learn on the job as you go. And it's a different path for everybody. And it's different, like when you wrote your book over those 14 years, you learn how to write as you go. You can go to classes and all that, and you can learn all the fundamentals, but you really got to do it yourself to be able to work out the bits and pieces. And so that was the inspiration for that book. And so I got through that. There were 9 books in that series. And I started the first Kane book came out in 2023. I wrapped up that series in January of this year, and I got a new series now. So just keep chugging forward, and hopefully with each iteration, I get a little bit better.
And I love that too, because you do have to find your voice. You know, that writing voice that you have. It is difficult to get in there and do that. So, but when you're switching between your series, was it difficult to make that transition from Hell Inc. to the Kane series? Or
no.
Let's go.
Do you know what I did? This is funny. What might have helped, and when I say that, it sounds like anything I say that sounds like I've worked things out, I stumble onto stuff. That's really what it comes down to. So what I did was, when I started the Hell Inc., when I did the Hell Inc. series, it was all from Raz's point of view. So first person, for the most part, just first person from Raz's point of view. And when I did the Kane books, that actually was a woman named Imelda, even though Kane is sort of like what the book is named after, the series is named after, because Kane used to be a wolf. He was a wolf that was out in the woods. Then he got bit by a human. And then Kane woke up the next day, 6'7" French Canadian. And so that's kind of the story behind it. And the moonlight, Kane, the man, in the moonlight, full moon, he turns into a werewolf. But I got sort of like selfish as an author. I didn't want to wait, 20 and a half days to go ahead and have something cool happen. So I thought, why is it just the full moon that affects people that turn into werewolves? What would they turn into in a lesser moon state? And I thought, well, a lesser moon, he'd be a lesser wolf, so he'd be a dog. So anytime Kane goes out in the moonlight and it's not a full moon, he turns into a dog based upon the size of the moon phase.
That's actually genius, though.
It's kind of fun. And so, and again, another one is I stumbled onto. And so even though so he's trying to get a cure for his humanness, so he can return to his pack, his family. And so there's a woman named Imelda, and he basically hires her to drive him around and read stuff, because he got a little bit of money, and there's a story behind that. So he can hire her, because apparently wolves that turn into humans, they can't read very well, and they're terrible drivers. So she is his driver, and over the 8 books really embraces his quest for this. But what that did for me was, since it's being told from her point of view, I had to change my voice up a bit, because now it's Imelda's point of view. So I'm writing from her point of view. So that was a big change for me, obviously from Raz, the male, into a female. Not as big as you might think, but there are differences in tone and how you're structuring things. And that was a way to force me to step out of myself and sort of embrace some of these strong women around me, like my wife and some women that I've known in the past, and put them into this. And so speaking through that character, through the first person point of view. And learning that, I've been able to do that another couple of times with a series that starts with Soul Ringer. There's another point of view from a different woman. And now Fame and Striker is my female point of view for the Facilite Con. And probably the next one, I might do a male point of view. But right now, I really enjoy writing with strong women.
Yeah.
But that was, I guess, a trick, if nothing else, to get me out of, because if I'd written that next series with another male point of view, I might have just written it as Raz from that Hell Inc. series. But I was sort of forced to change that up because the gender changed.
You know, it actually would have changed the whole book, really, if you're doing that. Yeah. I mean, that really is pretty smart. Because I found it difficult at first writing a woman's point of view. Of course, not being a woman, how was I going to approach it? And then I found myself doing that thing where I didn't want the woman to face any adversity because, you know, we were projecting onto them about this being fragile and all that. And I'm like, why am I doing this? She's a human being. She's out doing this thing. She's going to encounter the same stuff. What's the adversity of her going through it? I'm like, just make her a real person. So for men out there trying to write a women's point of view, what would your advice be to that? Because you can find yourself trying to be overly protective, I think, even of the female in the character sometimes.
I'll get some advisors for one, but my advantage is my girl's Texan, and so I know her voice real well, and I know when it gets loud. You know? And I've got a lot of women friends. Like when I was in the stand-up comedy scene, the women I knew were no shrinking violets. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in radio, I had women. There were some brilliant Latina women because actually in that story, Imelda is half Latina. I knew some amazing Latina women. Same thing. So my women characters are sharp, man. There's no deference at all. You know, in fact, I would almost argue they got sharper tongues than Raz ever did. You know, he was a bit fumbling through. My characters, those female characters, don't fumble through, man. They're great. I do it, and I think there's part of it you got to love them because I really do love them. I think they're great, and I kind of wish I could be like them because they're very confident. But so I guess that if you're going to be a guy writing as a woman or a woman writing as a guy, just run it by some women or men you know. Say, does this sound proper? Does this sound like a voice? There's not as much difference as you might think. There is a difference in perspective and consideration. Every situation is slightly different, but it's not like the verbiage is that much different. It's just perspective. And that's something you sort of pick up over time.
And that is so very true. I'm so glad you said that too, because it is something I struggle with. And I know a couple of other authors, we were talking about this the other day about how difficult that is sometimes to get that correct. Because you just, again, I'm a big Ripley fan from Aliens. Of course. Her character is awesome. And I love that they don't look at her as female. They just look at her as Ripley. And that's how I try to treat my female characters as their own person. When you're creating characters, is it something that comes to you, or how much thought do you put into each character you come up with?
It depends on the character. Like, it's funny. I have, like, with the Facilite Con series, there is a character called Cleanbot. And Cleanbot is just drone who cleans, right? But so then I wanted to write a prequel to kind of do a bit of a promo sort of idea. And so one character I don't want to bring in. And so Feynman was on this ship that she just inherited, because what happens is that Feynman is on this crew, and she's sort of lowest person on the totem pole on this crew, but then all the rest of the crew dies in a fireball. And so she sort of inherits this ship, and she has no idea what she's doing, but she becomes captain of the ship. And so she's got to get this crew. And so basically she ends up inheriting some crew that were literally, broken, in the sense that some of them were like on a trash heap. And one of them is this Cleanbot, who used to be a bomb sweeper, but then she put a different module in that she didn't know which one it was. And now he's a cleaning robot with a very militant sort of way of cleaning, sometimes quite destructive. But what's funny, and why I mention all of that, is because when I first wrote Cleanbot in the Facilite Con, which comes out on the 20th of August, by the way, when I first wrote that, he's in there and he's great and he's strong. He's a bit of a device through there, and it's funny, and it's quite funny the stuff he says, or I should say it. There's no gender with Cleanbot. But then in the prequel to that, which I just finished up, called Before the Con, suddenly Cleanbot started to develop this personality, and it was really very little that I was participating in. But because Cleanbot was so much through the story and helping Feynman in her sort of quest to kind of work out what she's doing on this ship, it developed and developed. And so I think it's kind of like this thing sits in your subconscious and it becomes a real person. And so Cleanbot is a real entity. And so there are some characters I work on a bit, and there's other characters that just sort of like grow, that just manifest themselves. And those are really fun, it's really neat to see that. And so I've been really hands off with that kind of creation, and it's really turned out, and Cleanbot is one of my favorite characters now. It's sort of this really sort of aggressive sweetness, but also like insanely sarcastic on occasion. And that wasn't by design or construction, that just manifests out of creating that character and sort of giving it space to be able to grow for itself. And I know a lot of that sounds kind of whatever, hokey pokey, whatever it might be, but it just really grew into that. And I've really loved the character a lot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't really understand it, especially if they're not writers. Like, I get enthralled by some of my characters affecting me a lot more, and they stay with me a lot more than other ones do. And it's not planned. It's just, I find when I write that a certain character starts speaking, and I really I listen, and all of a sudden it's taking over, and I have to ask myself at night when I can't go to sleep, like, what happened? What just happened? And now this character right here is the most favorite thing I've written. So when that happens to you, like with the Cleanbot here, is that something that just excites you more when you come up with a character like that?
Yep, absolutely. And I wish I had a better description of it, but I think there's something to do when you have the great privilege to be able to do what we do, embracing that talent, that God-given talent. When you really start to go down that path that God has decided for you, you need to be doing some of this writing thing. There's this reward thing that comes from it. That you just feel like I'm not trying to be spiritual, but like you feel closer to God in some way. And that is just this rush. It's exhilaration when you do that. And so the more that it's growing, I keep on doing that. The more that it's growing as a character, more and more, it's really thrilling. And in fact, I have plenty of people all the time say, "Oh, that's such a funny line. This thing that Kane said, or that, Elmac said, or that even Raz said, it was one of my favorite lines." In fact, I've had readers of the Kane series that have said, like, the people pick up favorite lines and they throw them back and forth among the family. They become like running jokes in the family. And it was a line that I wrote. But cool. Here's the thing. Here's the secret of it, though. I didn't really sit down and write it. It just kind of comes to you, especially when it comes to the real fun humor lines. They just kind of get, like Tom Petty once said, he said, like, the great lyrics and great lines, they kind of rain down on you as these gifts that you kind of collect. And that's really what it is. There is something to be said for obviously taking those and some construction, right? So if you got kind of a funny concept or a line, you might mess around a little bit with word order to make it funny or punchier. But for the most part, the best lines just kind of come to you. And it's amazing. And like you say, it's an amazing feeling when that happens.
Do you do a lot of reading? Or have you, now that you're writing a lot, I don't know if you're reading a lot now, but did you do a lot of reading before versus now?
So there's a running joke I have on one of my profiles somewhere is that when I was a kid, like when I was like 7 or 8, my father gave me the book Wind in the Willows, which naturally put me off writing for about 3 or 4 years, because that's not a book. Don't give that to a kid. It's just a little too dense and a little bit too much allegory for a 7-year-old. But then I discovered Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I fell in love because it was like, wait a minute, so you can make anything up, there's no rules at all. I mean, there's structure rules, and you've got some promises you make to the reader, but that really ignited my love of reading. And it's not just stuff that's funny. Like there's a guy named Bobby Adair, and he has a series called Slow Burn, which I really love because his writing is really, really good. Joe Abercrombie, who does the First Law trilogy, and then The Devils in that. And some of his stuff is quite funny, but he's just a beautiful writer. There's a guy out of Boston, the guy that did Mystic River, Dennis Lehane. That guy's a brilliant writer. I can get into any sort of style of writing and really, really enjoy it. But yeah, as much as I'm working right now, I don't get a whole lot of chance to sit down and read, but I do make sure I am reading, because every time you're reading something, you can learn from that.
Mhm.
Because if you're reading it's like watching a film, even as a writer or a creator. Because if you watch a film or a television show and there's a moment that you feel your heart racing, stop for a second, go like, so how did they do that? How what did they do? Was it quick cuts? Was it per point of view perspective? Were the things in the foreground, the background? Same thing with writing. It's like how did that happen where I'm reading this passage and it just flew past? Or it was an action sequence that really I never felt like it was forced. I felt like I was actually watching like a movie in my head. Well, stop for a second. If you're into this sort of thing as a writer, creator, stop and go back and say, like, let me see if I can work out what they did. Was it the pacing? Was it the lack of dialogue? Was it sparsing dialogue in and out? Was it distraction? Was it action verbs? What was it? And the more you can do that when you read, it's still enjoyable to read the books, but I get a real kick out of trying to pull those pieces apart and put them back together in my own writing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. There was an author, Piers Anthony, who I loved Piers Anthony. His Pale Horse series, that whole series right there was so brilliant. But when I read it the first time, I was like, you can write stuff like this? Like,
yeah, sure.
I'm like, because it is brilliant. And a buddy of mine says, why do you always put twist on the end of your books? I said, because I don't like writing anything that you can be becoming. I said, that's a character thing for me. I said, it's not
right
because I feel like I'm trying to trick somebody. It's just what I like. Do you find yourself?
You've got to write what you want to read. And that's something I learned. Like I mentioned before, when I first started writing, when I got involved with that Beverly Hills Agent back 23 years ago or so, I was writing to the market, right? And so I wrote 2 books that were thrillers, and they were good. They were serviceable thrillers, but it was the sort of thing that it would only, when my wife said to me, just write something you like. But what I liked was a little bit off. It's a little bit gonzo. And I have plenty of people that I'll see that read something that I wrote, and they'll say, it took me a while to get into the style, but now that I have, I like it, whatever it might be. Because you kind of never know what's going to be coming at you. And there is a voice, since it is first person POV. I'll throw jokes and comments in there the entire time to get pick up on that. But yeah, I think it's really necessary for you to write something that you wish that you could read, because it's going to take so much as an author to be able to keep pushing that stone up that hill. And if it's not something that you really want to read, I don't know how you finish that. That's got to be it makes it that much more difficult to get that done.
Yeah, I've got several abandoned manuscripts. I was like, why am I doing this? This is not what I want to do. I just saw that there was a market for it. I thought, maybe I can try that. But I do agree. I think you have to stick with what you love to write.
And the thing is
gotta be.
And even the stuff you've abandoned, you can still use some of that. Like I wrote after that series, that Swordsman series that I wrote back in 2012, I wrote a follow-up after that. Like for 2013, that I never quite finished. It was 3 out of 5 books. I never quite finished that. But there was a character idea in that called a doppel, short for doppelganger. And I had the whole history of how those doppels were created. I actually hijacked that from that book some 20 years ago. And it's now in the new Facilite Con. So there's a character named Booth, and he's a doppel. And I have his entire history all mapped out because I wrote it 20 years ago. And so, so those things that you abandon, there's still stuff you can bring out later on. They're not totally, orphan ideas. If it's good enough for you to put down on paper, there's a good chance you can use some part of that later on.
Yeah, I've managed to scrap a few of those and throw them into some of these. But that was leading me to my question earlier, was that, so when you're reading, this has always been my fear, because I've heard it come up and I've heard it said, because everybody wants to get into copyright issues, or whether you're ripping somebody off and all these other things that happen when you're trying to be original, but you've experienced a lot in life. You've read a lot. You've watched a lot. Have you ever had something happen where you write down going, this is so good, and then realize, oh my God, did somebody else write that or experience that, and I'm just remembering it? Has that ever happened to you?
There have been occasions, like when I first came up with the concept for Kane, that idea that I described earlier, the idea that he was a wolf bit by a man, turns into a 6'7" French Canadian. In the full moon, he becomes a werewolf. In other moon phases, he becomes dogs. I had to ask around, like, has anybody ever done that? And so there will be elements where somebody says, I think somebody did that small part of it in something else, this other small part in something else. But for the most part, no one had ever seen any of that put together. And and most people couldn't even find any of that in a familiar way. But really, we've been, the Odyssey just came out in movies. That's a 3,000-year-old book.
Yeah.
We've been writing stuff down for a couple of millennia. So you're not necessarily going to have an idea that is 100% new.
Yeah.
There'll be something that we've seen before somewhere, because trust me, and you've seen it as much as I've seen it, there'll be some jerk that comes on to like a social media post, or if you're doing Facebook ads or something, say, oh, I saw this in this other book. It's like, well, yeah, you're going to see stuff in other books because we've been doing books for a long time. So there'll be something similar.
It is, and it happened to me with Black Ridge, because I'm a huge Aliens fan. I love the Greys and all that stuff. One of the first books I ever read at 7 years old was about UFOs.
Right.
So I write the book and I'm advertising. I'm doing all the stuff, and sure enough, some guy goes, "Dude, I've read about aliens in other books." I'm like, really?
Yeah.
You now.
It's the one of the greatest advantages I have, having once been in radio, is that I've got really thick skin. There's almost nothing somebody can say mean to me, because I had people that wanted me dead when I was in radio just because I was a public figure.
Sure.
And so, so I don't feel so bad, because there was a time when somebody very graphically expressed what they wanted to do. And so when somebody wants to turn your skin into a lampshade, if later on somebody doesn't like your book so much, I'm okay with that.
That's right.
If somebody says, I didn't really like this book, cool. He doesn't want to turn me into a suit. I'm really happy about that. So yeah. So there's not a lot somebody can say to me that's going to upset me at this point, because I've had the worst things possible said about me.
Another good point, though. You have to have tough skin if you're going to do anything in the public space.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's there's a couple different ways. For one, you sort of develop that over time. One way is don't let the highs mean too much, or the lows will mean that much. So if somebody comes on to there and says, "It's the greatest book ever. It's my favorite book. I love this. I go to sleep at night and put it on my pillow." If you don't let that mean too much, and I get that idea, but if you don't let that mean too much, then when somebody says this is the worst book I've ever read, I buried it in my backyard, then that won't mean as much really either. But what I've done with some of the criticism early on, and this was less about somebody making a comment about the books, because like I said before, it's like if you get somebody who doesn't like your book, well, good, because there should be people that don't like your book. Because if everybody likes your book, then you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely going to be people who don't like it, and there are people going to hate what you've done. I've had that as well. But I had people within my own life, especially in television, detractors that were around me, that were actually quietly, or maybe less quietly, just hoping that I would fail. And, we know people around us like that, that maybe they're frenemies or whatever it might be, or they're shooting daggers at you. And that actually, when you get that in your life, that can be kind of debilitating. But it can also, if you turn it around, it can actually be kind of fuel. Because when I was writing that first Kane book, I was in television at the time. So I was doing 12-hour days in television, but I was also writing the book before I started my 12-hour day. So my day started at 7:30, which meant I was getting up at 4:30 or 5 to write for a couple hours in the morning. And on those mornings when I was too tired, I don't want to do it, I don't want to get up and do it, all I thought to myself was, you know what, Gary would love to hear that. Oh my gosh, if Gary knew right now I was lying in bed and I wasn't going to chase after that dream, he would just be beaming ear to ear with a giant grin, because he wants to see me fail. So that hate and derision from Gary, I'm making that name up, from Gary over there, I used that as fuel to get my butt out of bed, because I knew how happy it would make Gary if I didn't write that day. So despite Gary, I got up and I wrote anyhow. And so you can use some of those critiques and those negative people in your life, use them as rocket fuel. And it really works. It really helps a lot.
No, I agree, because that's how I've approached everything. Is I take the negativity, you have to turn into a positive, or it will consume you. I mean, it will really eat you alive. And that was going to be my question. So is that something you've had to deal with for a long time, and just said, hey, look, anything that comes out, I am going to turn that around and use it to my benefit? Because it is real easy to lean into it.
Yeah, you got to do that as best you can. I also fight narcolepsy, and you may not be able to tell, but I have narcolepsy, which means I'm tired all the time.
Oh,
and so, but the advantage I have with that, same thing, like you said, you take that negative, because I could say I'm too tired to write, But one advantage I have as somebody who basically feels like he's on the verge of sleep all the time is for about 80% of my day, I'm kind of in a bit of a sleep wake state. But that's where some of the cool creativity can come from. Like if you're lying down at night and when you're thinking, as you're just about to fall asleep, you get that amazing idea. You think, oh, you know what? I should write that down. No, I won't write it down. I'll remember in the morning. Then you wake up the next morning, you didn't write it down, and you don't remember it. So that state of creativity where you come up with that amazing idea as you're falling asleep, I'm there most of the day. And I for as much as it can be debilitating sometimes to have narcolepsy, I do think it's something that I take a look as a part of my creativity, and it helps me create things. But we can also do it on the other side, right? Because we know how that negativity can punish us in that, how that negativity sometimes can get us down. So knowing that, also turn around, and if you know creative people around you, encourage them. Because encouraging somebody else actually makes you feel better too. So if you see somebody who's kind of reaching for their dreams, or somebody that's trying to be creative, and whatever it might be, and they might be painting, they might be writing, they might be sculpting, hell, they might be collecting cars, or they might be working on vehicles, whatever. Just, tell them, if you think they're doing a good job, tell them that. Because there's so many other people around them potentially that are kind of taking chips at them. You never know when a nice word just might be enough. Like that reviewer I had back in 2012, in October of 2012, that said, this might be genius or it might be insane. That really helped fuel me to the next level. And I wonder where I might have been had I not gotten that. So yeah, throw a kind word out there every now and then, and you'll find that does something for you as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that's so important too. Like, you look at yourself when you were younger versus when you're older. You've got a little bit more life experience, and it's one of those things for me to where I played the bad guy in wrestling for 30 years, so everybody expects the worst. But for me as a human, and with my friends, it's like, look, you got something you want. A buddy of mine is starting to write. He's writing a lot now where he wasn't before, and he comes to me and says, "Look at what I have. I need you to check it out." Absolutely, let's look at it. I'm like, dude, this is so good. You just gotta keep after it. And now he's on his third book in the series.
Right.
And he comes to me often, and I'm like, he's like, dude, I'm not trying to bother you. I'm like, brother, you are not bothering me. I'm just happy to see somebody doing something they love to do. Because it's easy for everybody else to tell that I can't do this, so you can't do this. I said, I love the fact that you're not afraid to do that, because it is important.
No, I agree 100%. And actually, in this past I was, there's a whole long story to this I won't get you into, but I was really somebody who was borderline atheist agnostic for many, many years, up until about 2-3 years ago when I got fired from my job at TV3. But I went through this whole process with me, and I've become Christian, and I'm involved with the Catholic Church and this sort of thing. And one of the things, and why I mention this now, is one of the things that I learned within the religion is one of the greatest things you can do is be salt for people, or light, right? The idea is your job is to help make other people's lives a little bit better. And if everybody did that, what an amazing world we would have right now. But a great tenet of the religion is just trying to make other people's lives just a bit better. If it's a kind word, or doing, going next door and taking their food delivery, putting it inside so nobody else sneaks off with it, just doing little things for each other, lifting each other up a little bit. And that is really one of the structures of the religion, of Christianity in general. And it's something that I've really embraced. And I love the idea. And it's kind of something, as a Canadian, we're born with anyhow. We're pretty positive people.
There you go.
But it's something I really do love, and something that that I'm trying to learn how to do more and more, because the more I can lift up other people, I do find that, like I said before, I do find that I get elevated in that as well.
I do too. As a matter of fact, I keep knocking him over when I'm doing these interviews. I keep baby Jesus with me all the time here.
That's good. That's good. Yep, I got my baptismal certificate right over here. Exactly right.
There you go. But I've become a big prayer here in the last couple of years, especially. But it brings me so much peace. But I've also found that it's helped me focus in my writing, in my everyday life, because I've only been writing prolifically here in the last 2.5 years. I've struggled all the 50 plus years before that. And it's so fun what the thing you don't realize can really turn on up here and in here as well.
Yeah.
Do you find you bring a lot of that, or that this way of thinking, call it positivity, call it Christianity, whatever you're going to call it, you find that it helps influence your writing, well, for lack of a better word, energy, like that? You just feel that it's hard to put into words, and that's which is sad for a writer. especially when you're talking about this. But I know that now I feel more clear-headed when it comes to my writing, whatever that's not ever did before. Like, it's not convoluted up here anymore.
I guess I don't know if my writing changes much. Some of my verbiage has changed. I'll give you that. but I will say, I guess 2 elements of that is, one is I tell people all the time. Here's a spoiler alert: in my books, the good guys will always win. Sorry, that's just how it is. And you don't know how they're going to win, but you're never going to read a book of mine and you're going to be bummed out. And there's plenty of people that write those books, and that's great for other people. But my books, there's always going to be something uplifting and positive in it. But if you'll indulge me, I had it part of the moment that's sort of the converging, the moment that kind of turned things around for me and kind of opened my eyes to some of this was here in New Zealand, where right after I got fired out of TV3, I was trying to find other jobs in television, but there's no jobs in television here because, like I said, everybody else on TV3 got fired. So I got 350 people, most of them younger than me, out there looking for jobs. So I'm over there speaking to some folks in Australia from here across the Tasman, and I'm interviewing with them. And I'm trying to get a job in television over there. And I'll never forget how I felt because I got onto this one call. Things were going really well. I was going to get on the line with 3 different people. Maybe I could produce some television news for them. And I got on the line, and the first thing out of the woman's mouth was, it was a Zoom call. First thing out of her mouth was, listen, before we start, I want to let you know that we have filled the position from within. But let's go ahead and have a conversation. And so I heard nothing after that. All my hopes were on this job here. But that wasn't the thing that struck me. You know what struck me? Is in my other room. I didn't even know it, but my wife was listening and I heard her crying. And that to me killed me.
Yeah.
You know, because she was worried. She was worried that we weren't really going to make it. And we're just sort of, because I had been the major breadwinner all that time. She worked too. But then I felt like I had failed as a man. I felt like I was letting the family down, her and I and the pets. But so at one point, I did actually end up calling a suicide hotline, and not to say that I necessarily was there, but we don't have a "I'm sad" hotline. It's pretty much just it's 100%. So you got to call these guys up, and so I called this person up, and I was hesitant because I didn't want to get on the line. And this person's going to go, listen, you don't want to do that because there are alternatives. You have other choices. I don't need that. That's not where I am. But I am feeling really dark right now. So I call the guy up, and this Kiwi guy answers the phone. And so I go back and forth and tell him how dark I'm feeling at the time. And he said, well, what brought this on? I said, I got fired. I go, really, what were you doing? And I said, I was working at TV3. I was working on this television show. And I told him the name of the show. He goes, oh, we used to watch that. I said, yeah, wow. I said, yeah. In fact, a whole bunch of people on my network ended up getting fired. He goes, yeah. He said, yeah. Our nights, we'd watch your show, and then we'd watch the news after that. And then most of our night was watching that. Yeah, that's really a bummer that all that's gone. I say, it is kind of a bummer that all that stuff is gone. And he's telling me how his night got ruined when my life fell apart. But he was really bummed out by it. And so he's telling me, yeah, I don't even know what our nights. They said, we don't even know what to do because all those shows are gone. And I said to the guy on the suicide hotline, I said, well, listen, you've got alternatives. You have choices. So you've got HBO and Apple and you've got TV. So literally here is me counseling the guy on the other end of the line, the suicide hotline, to tell him, listen, there's other things you could check. So I'm trying to make him feel better. And to me, that was that moment of epiphany, because I was like, that is so unique. That's so funny to me. The irony of that is so funny. If I had called up and he was just really sweet and nice and trying to tell me things, don't worry, things will get better, I probably wouldn't have heard it. But that was such a unique moment that was really geared towards me, where I kind of, you look up and go, you're screwing with me, aren't you? You're winking at me. It was so bespoke. It was so designed. That moment was so designed to reach me, that I felt like, okay, there's something else happening. There's some other presence that's been happening around me. And that was just a great, I guess, a comforting moment, because I felt for as dark as things were, for as negative as I was feeling, there is somebody keeping an eye on me. And then my faith kind of grew from there, to be honest. But yeah, that was sort of a funny moment. And at some point, I'll probably end up taking that moment and putting that into one of my stories, because you put everything.
Oh, yeah. Which is so brilliant too, because I wasn't going to share this, but I will. So I wrote, because you brought it up, I wrote this book.
Yeah. Right.
because of the same thing, really. Because I have trouble speaking to people about it, but I never had a problem writing it down.
Right.
And so all the things I was keeping separately, I said, okay, buddy, let's just write a book in your style, how you would do it. Let's make it a horror, because that's really what you feel like.
Right.
So 90% of this, and my buddy the other day said, dude, it caught me off guard. I said, well, 90% of that's real life. It's true. It's almost autobiographical. He said, I would say that 100% of it's true from what I read of it. I said, dude, but it's about this. He said, but what if that's all in your mind still? So you are being haunted by this in your thoughts. And it really put a new perspective on it for me. But kind of like you, it was so refreshing in a different form of getting this out there.
Yeah, because for writing can be like we were saying before. Writing is you're writing for your readers, but you're also writing. You're your first reader.
Yeah.
So you are writing for yourself in a lot of ways, and putting that stuff down on paper. There is an element of getting it out of you, because you know what it feels like when you don't write for a couple of days or weeks. You just feel anxious and weird and screwy and all this sort of stuff. You kind of got to get that goo out of you, whatever it might be, and get that stuff onto the page. But also the other element is, I would find that, I'm guessing, but if other people were to read that story you've written, they'll probably see a little bit of themselves, or a lot of themselves, in that story. And there is something to be said for, we all think that what we're going through is really unique. The challenges that we have and the feelings we have, or the darkness that we have, is that's kind of ours and nobody else can relate. But then you start to realize it, and so many other people can relate. So I would think that book that you've got there probably potentially helps out a lot of people, because they can see that whatever they might be feeling, that somebody else has felt it as well.
Yeah, and I've been approached by a few people with this. We were at the theater a couple of weeks ago, and an elderly lady approached me back. She'd read the book. She said, we got to talk about your book. I'm like, which one? I'm like, and I apologize before we get into this. And she talked about this, and she started telling me these stories. Like, oh my God. And it was so felt. And it was one of those things so that's, to me, with writing, is one of my favorite things, is the response that we get. Has there been these people who've come up to you, it's just moved you from what they've told you, how these books moved them?
Yeah, nobody's come up to me because I live in New Zealand.
Well, that's
true. Although it's crazy, because there was something where my cousin was at a store. It's somewhere on the North Island in the middle of nowhere. She's standing to wait to get her purchases done. And somebody in the store said, hey, do you have a Cane by Dick Wybrow? And my cousin was like, what is that? Where she was, who's asking for my cousin's book? So there are elements of it around us. But yeah, there are people that reach out to me, like I mentioned, that some people, like, there's running jokes that they'll use. But one of the most amazing notes I got was from a woman whose husband, not to go stark or sad again, but it was something that was positive. Her husband was dying. And so what she did was she sat down and read all 8 books to him. So every night they would sit down and she'd read, because he couldn't read anymore. I have trouble seeing, but she would read some of these passages, these books to him every single night over the weeks that he was slowly dying. And he would be excited about it. And she quoted it back to me. And it's a phrase that I'll never forget. It was like, where she'd sit down with a book and he would say, let's find out what old Cane's up to tonight. And he was kind of excited to get into it. And she thanked me for writing that, because that gave her a bit of an opportunity for the two of them to sit together and not just sort of like get mired in how scared they were or sad they were. There was this kind of goofy book that they could read together and laugh about some of the passages and some of the sweetness between the main characters and all that sort of thing. And it gave them a bit of an avenue to be able to say goodbye to each other. And there's really very little in the world that can be better than that for me. To be able to make somebody's life at the worst time possible just a little bit better. There's no amount of money you give me that can equal how great that feeling is, that I could give that to somebody. So yeah, it's been, like I said, I've been really, really blessed. I'm really, really lucky for the responses I've had through my books. And I really hope that the new one, and this isn't a pitch, but I have no idea if the new one's any good. I don't know. I'll find out here soon, but we'll see. But hopefully people like it, because it is unique and bizarre on occasion.
Well, that's all, and that's a great story too. And you're right. There's something special about being an author. I've done all forms of entertainment, but there's something special about being an author for me. That's just a kind of unmatched. I guess it's the oldest form of storytelling we have. is what we're doing. First, it was word of mouth, and we've been writing things down like we talked about Homer and 3,000 years ago. I mean, it is special what we do. With you in the here and now, and you looking at your younger self, and you've got this new book coming out, because I want to talk about that. We're going to promote that because I've already kept you an hour, and I'm sorry I've kept you so long, buddy.
No, it's all good.
What would you tell your younger self, and where do you see your older self at the same time with where we are?
I think, the hard part is about telling your younger self something, because so many, and there's actually been studies about this, where if you take a look at the things that shape our lives, and those really impactful negative things that shape our lives, like death or losing jobs or whatever it might be, I guess I would be tempted to tell my younger self to have, don't go out with that one person or whatever it might be. Don't marry that other person. But the thing is, all of that makes you who you are today. So I guess if I had anything to say to my younger self, I'd probably just say, hey, good luck. I'll be here when you get here, but hold on tight, because she's going to be bumpy, because you've got to take the tragedy, you've got to take those negativities, you got to take the struggles. We treat struggle as a bad word. We try to avoid struggles, we try to avoid that kind of strife, but really those are the moments that make us who we are, that make us appreciate the people that we do have in our lives. So you got to embrace the struggles, you got to embrace the hard times. You got to embrace the times where you don't have any dough, and tonight it's tomato soup again, and really that's just ketchup and hot water. Yeah, we've all been through those times, but those are the times you remember. Those are times that make you stronger. So yeah, I wouldn't give any advice to my younger self. He's on his own until he gets here. He's on his own. And for the older version of me, I think it's just make more time for your friends, and it's something I'm trying to do better, get better at. Because even now, and as writers that sit in this little room by themselves for 10, 12 hours a day, I could just be an island unto myself, and I'm fine with that, but I know that it's going to matter to me to have friends and people close to me when I get older. And so you got to make those when you're younger, or, even my age in my 50s. And I've started to gather a group of friends around me who I really love. And so it's just that, it's just, creating a life, creating, friendships, going to the gym, which I do. I try and keep healthy. Basically, it's just trying to make sure my older 10 years, 20 years from now is going to be happy that I'm doing all the things I'm doing now. Do my best to make that person happy 10, 20 years from now.
There you go. So let's talk about and promote this book. It's coming out August 20th, which is right around the corner, 9 days away.
Yeah, it's fast from now, brother.
So what all we need to promote your book at this point? And there we go. It finally did it.
What happened? Did it?
It did it.
I warned you about that before. So yeah, I knew that would happen. So here we go. I got to fix my camera. I don't know what that is. It just periodically decided to shut down. But now I got to go tiny. I think when I move things around on the desktop. Oh, now you're gonna go all the way into my face. There we go. So I don't want to give you the big whole plot behind it, but basically the Facilite Con there's a bit of sci-fi, there's humor in it, there's a whole lot of fun, but at its heart, it's about what happens when life hands you something that you were completely unprepared for, and then that way the universe kind of goes, well, okay, great, now let's make it 10 times harder. Because that's really at its core. Because like I mentioned before, the Facilite Con is about a woman who gets thrust into the captain's chair of a starship after her old crew dies in a fireball. They all get blown up. And the new crew she assembles are basically these throwaways, machines that were literally tossed out onto a garbage heap. And a guy named Bert. Bert is this engineer, and he actually has a genetic modification, so he's got 2 thumbs on each hand. So I say he's got 4 thumbs and no clue. So Feynman, our starship captain, she's got bad guys and danger coming in at her from every direction. And somehow this collection of people that nobody else wanted, they've got to figure out how to beat the odds so they can save their ship, which has become their home. And it's fun. It's like I mentioned, there's Cleanbot as one of the characters. The ship itself is a bit of a character. And a lot of the centers around this one character called Elmac. And I don't want to give too much away, but Elmac is a robot that looks a bit like a human that that have been severed in two, and so Elmac has no legs from the thighs down, and so an unusual sort of character for a robot that basically just gets around on his stumps and some like caster wheels, which I thought was really unique and kind of a character that spoke to me when I started writing it. And I didn't even know when I first started writing it, I didn't even know why he was like that until slowly that character started to reveal himself. And when it began to reveal himself in the story, I thought it really powerful through that. So it's a fun story, and I hope people enjoy it. Like I mentioned, we've been producing the audiobook with my woman from New York, Amy Hutchins, my narrator, who's been brilliant. She's so good. And the audiobook and the paperback actually comes out here in just a couple of days. I always have the paperback come out a bit earlier because people want to order that, and they can get that in the mail by the time that everybody else gets their audiobook or I guess their ebook. So yeah, if you're interested in, it's sci-fi, but it's a little bit like a lot of people that read the Kane series go like, I've never read a werewolf book before or a fantasy book like this. It's like, it's not really a werewolf book. It's just sort of a fun book that happens to use that as a bit of a device, as a bit of a bit of a machine to get us there. So even if you're not a big fan of sci-fi, this is light sci-fi. This is just, it's a bit of a device. It's a bit of a machine to get us there. And I hope people enjoy it more than anything. I really hope people enjoy it.
I hope they do too, because I know I'm getting the book. Because I'll tell you what sold me on it. I always look at my guest stuff just to be sure what's going on and see. So I'll kind of know where I'm going with the conversation. But when I read In Space No One Can Hear You Scheme, I thought, you know what? That's the man after my own heart.
Right.
The story I'm going to read.
Yeah, she's a con artist, and that's that old crew of hers. They were all con artists in space. Because I love the idea of confidence people. Always struck me as that's a really cool kind of character. And these are just con artists on a ship. And so now she's by herself and she's running her own cons, and that's what the Facilite Con is. Is basically there's this magistrate that comes and wants her to steal these gems, and that's what Facilite is. It's a gemstone. And then how she ends up twisting that around to get the most out of it and kind of con him. So yeah, it's a fun little story. And yeah, In Space No One Can Hear You Scheme is one of those lines that came to me while I was writing that I wish I really wrote, but it just got delivered to me as a gift, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
So I get people like you that know, oh, that's really clever. Like, is it? Great. Because I didn't really construct it. It's like, I think I might've been in the shower or on the throne or something, and it just hit me. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to write that down, which has been a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. Dick, I appreciate your time today. I know it's been a while. Thank you so much for doing this for me tonight. I really do appreciate it. I cannot wait to get this book. I'm probably going to order it when we get off of here, pre-order, because I think pre-orders are up now, correct?
They are up. Absolutely, my friend.
All right. So definitely I'm going to pre-order this book, but I appreciate your time tonight, dude. I know it's been a lot, but you have been just awesome. I
appreciate you too, my friend. You too. I really appreciate it. And best of luck to all your listeners and viewers. And I apologize to any of the viewers that caught that camera zoom thing. I knew it would happen at some point.
That was perfect. I forgot all about it until it did it.
Yeah, it chooses the moment. It chooses its moments. It's been great. I love talking to you, brother.
Me too, bro. So I appreciate it. And we'll talk soon. I promise.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
We'll do it.
All right, guys. Wow. Dude, that was awesome. And when I say awesome, not trying to be hyperbole, I'm telling you, that was great. That was great. What a great interview. What a great guy all the way around. Sounds like super talented. And yes, I am ordering this book because that's something that I know I will read. This series sounds good. The Kane series sounds incredible. And this is why I like supporting authors like Dick and our writing community. And for those of you who just love to read, or maybe you've never read a book, why not jump in now and do that? Because there's so much good stuff that will take you out of the chaos of the world we live in every single day. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So go check out Dick, get his books. You can get them on Amazon. Go to his website. It's easy to get to. I'm going to link it down below, but really it's dickwybrow.com. That's Wybrow, WYBROW.com. Go check it out. Pre-order your book. Check out some of his earlier books. You can get them everywhere. They're highly celebrated. I've already checked out the ratings, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with a lot of people on here. If you're even remotely into humor, who's not, then this is right up your alley. Appreciate you guys being here. You are listening to the FAFO Podcast. Facts, truth, no BS. Let's effing go. I'll see you guys next time.
4 on the floor, have a tank of gas. Does he boots on the wood, let the whiskey pass. I ain't preaching from a pulpit, I'm talking from the scar. You can dress up a lie, but it won't get far. They call it toxic